And welcome to another episode of Your Next Favorite Movie. I am your host, Josh G. And I guess I'll just start off by saying happy Friday the 13th, everyone. And of course, I have only one guest. He's been on multiple times, always covering horror movies. He's the only one that fits this, doing this with me. Please welcome back to the show, author Anthony Brownlee.
What up, y'all?
All right, so you were on recently talking about Blackula. You said you were almost completed editing your latest novel. Can you break the news? Is that thing done, complete, ready to go?
It is officially done on my end, I'll say. Right now the book cover is being done.
Okay.
So once that book cover is finally in my hands, that book will be released.
And what is the normal timetable on something like that? Just so we have an idea.
Well, usually it kind of depends on really the artist right now at this point. He it's like somebody new I'm working with, and he actually has a few projects right now. So could be maybe a month, maybe two, just depending. But that book should be released this year.
Okay. All right. At least this year is what I was going to get to. All right. Sounds good. So this is our Friday 13th episode. We're going to get right into it. We're going to be talking about all of Friday the 13th. All right. So let's just get your general thoughts on the franchise. We'll just start with that.
Well, Friday the 13th as a whole, like I just love it. I loved it since I was a kid. I've been watching it since I was a kid. It was always on TV. I mean, TV back in the 90s was amazing. Like every Friday the 13th, the Friday the 13th marathons were on. And even when it wasn't Friday the 13th, you could catch a few on like Friday nights or something, maybe on like USA Up All Night, something like that. And I'd watch them every single time, over and over again. And they're just fun, like, literally, just fun Friday night slasher flicks. They are literally the epitome of, when I think of slasher movies, this is like the epitome of what I think about as slasher movies is Friday the 13th. They have there's just the basic formula. They set up, would-be victims. always heading to Camp Crystal Lake in some type of capacity. And then, mayhem ensues. I mean, and, couldn't ask for anything more. It's just Friday the 13th is just a fun ride all the way through.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you about this is what you think about the slasher. Like you can go to Halloween. I like to call that's the prototype, but that's more about atmosphere and dread building.
Right.
When you think of slashers, this is the type of movie you think about. And look, Halloween 2 copied this formula the next year to make that. They're like, oh wait, we need more blood and gore now because of Friday the 13th. So
right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I first discovered Friday the 13th on USA Up All Night myself. So there you go.
Awesome.
That's where I got my first glimpse when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, something around there.
Yeah.
All right,
probably about the same age.
Oh, so you were a little bit older than Nightmare, so that's good. That's good. Just
oh, yeah.
A tiny bit. So I'm sure you'll have some fun stories, and we'll get to them as we go. So I'll let you kick off the list. You're number 12. We're working our way to the top.
All right. Wait, so you want me to get my list from 1 to 12?
No. I want you to start with your bottom, and we'll go back and forth.
Go back. Okay. So my top.
Nope, bottom of the list. Bottom of the list first.
Bottom list. Okay, now all right. So
least
bottom
favorite.
Of the list. For me, it is the remake, but really not in the sense that I think it's a bad movie. Because actually, when I did watch it, I felt like it could have been almost a modern day sequel if they actually had just called it Friday the 13th. I don't know, just 2009 or something, like, then just let you know that, okay, it's still following the same storyline. But since it technically is a remake, I always just put it at the bottom because of that reason, because it technically is already following a formula that's already been done and trying to be recreated. But I honestly don't mind the remake. I can watch the remake as much as I watch the other ones, because it kind of did really set up that same formula and kind of kept that atmosphere, even though it doesn't feel the same because this wasn't a movie in the 80s, so that it it had that modern day feel, but it tried to catch some of that essence of the earlier films.
Okay. Well, I'll give my thoughts on that movie much later in this list. It goes a little bit higher than you. I knew coming into this we were going to have very differing opinions, which is why I knew it'd be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So my bottom of the list, and this is I like all of these movies, but this one I actually love this movie, but I can't put it high on the list. And what I'm talking about is Freddy versus Jason. And the reason is because it's a nightmare movie. It's the storyline's driven through Nightmare on Elm Street. The majority of the movie takes place on Elm Street. Right. It's very little Friday the 13th. Yes, you get Jason, but this is a Friday the 13th episode. Don't get me wrong. I love this movie. And we've talked behind the scenes about doing a nightmare ranking. It will rank pretty high in that because I look at this as a Nightmare on Elm Street movie more than a Friday the 13th movie.
Right.
And that's really the only reason I can give because I love it. It is easily one of my favorite. It would probably be top 4 if I just ranked it without taking the Friday the 13th into account. I love Freddy versus Jason. One of my favorite theatrical experiences. I love Jason gets a lot of kills. I love the folding up the bed on Trey kill. Oh my God, that's awesome. I love when Freddy comes to real world and they just brawl bloody as all hell. But I'm going purely off the Friday the 13th part of it, and I'm going to have to put it at the bottom because it's a nightmare movie for me.
Yeah, I actually do agree on that. It does feel more of a nightmare film just because Freddy, Freddy's basically narrating it, from the beginning and, letting you know what's going on. And, Jason almost feels like that second element that just gets pulled in as opposed to it almost being part of it because, it's almost like Freddy's just using him as a tool, in the beginning, but then he realizes he can't control Jason like he thought he could.
So go to your next one. What comes?
What will come after the remake for me will be Jason X. And like I said, again, love Jason X. I thought it was a lot of fun. Because obviously, it's in the title, Jason X. It's the 10th Friday the 13th film. What else could you have done that, hasn't been done already in this franchise? So, they always say the big thing is like, if they didn't start in space, don't take them to space. But I like Jason in space. To be honest, and especially being it was like 400 years in the future, and like the Earth, the original Earth had been destroyed, and now they, there's this Earth 2, and and now we're bringing Jason into this, and one of my favorite parts of that is him being. And when he basically in that movie, he's basically blown to bits. Like he's not coming back, in that film. But he's, accidentally, regenerated through their technology and becomes this Uber Jason. And I love his like metallic chrome suit and his mask, and he just looked real. I just really like that look on him. No, we had never seen Jason that. In a sense, that put together, he's always been more raggedy, just always in overalls, farm, type of deal. But this, he was just super decked out and I couldn't even imagine that Jason was on, at the camp, during those early scenes, something like that, Jason like that.
All right, I have Jason X a little higher up as well. And I get the feeling my next one you're going to have up and probably kind of high. I could be wrong. And I'm talking about at number 11 for me is Friday 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I know. It's I love Tommy Jarvis. I don't love this Tommy Jarvis. It's the fact that they have like, I don't know, a home for troubled teens and it's right on Camp Crystal Lake. I'm like, and that's where Tommy Jarvis just happens to end up at. I mean, obviously you got to look past that kind of stuff, but fake Jason, you get, Roy. Everyone knows Roy is Jason, so it's not the real Jason. I can look past that because there's someone dressed as Jason running around
Yeah.
killing people, so I can look past that part. But for some reason, like even though like it's sleazier than most because it had a former porn director than
right.
Yeah, that directed it. It does have the most kills up to that point anyway, so that's good. You do get a random dance scene in the bedroom. That I always love random dance scene in horror movies, so that's a good thing. But overall, I get kind of bored with this one. And like I say, I like all these, but I gotta throw it at the bottom, near the bottom, for that reason.
Yeah.
I know. You can give your thoughts on it when you get there because I have a feeling it's kind of high for you. So, where would your next one go? What's your next movie?
So my next one after, well, I guess before Jason X would be Freddy versus Jason for me. That's where Freddy versus Jason fits for me. Okay. But like what we said before, I always did feel like it was more of a Freddy movie than a Jason movie. And technically it was the first Jason or Freddy film that I ever saw in theaters. Because most of those had all come out before I was born or just like way, way too young, to, have gone and seen it. So technically for me, it was both. So it kind of holds like a little special spot. And I just remember it being like, everybody was so hyped for it. And I remember when I first saw it, it was me and my older cousin, we went. And after we got out of the theater, I just remember us coming out of our showing, and then there was this huge line starting at the ticket podium, like almost to the door, like people just waiting to get in to see, Freddy versus Jason. I was like, wow, because that was like really honestly the first one I ever seen like a huge lineup like that, for a movie, not just a movie, but a horror movie.
Well, I mean, going back, Freddy versus Jason was an event. Like they had the weigh-in, like a true fight back then. Yep. And it wasn't my first. I'll get to that one in a minute that I saw in a theater. But I went to see this the opening Friday night. I went back the Saturday night, and I went back one more time the following weekend because this movie was huge for me. Like I say, when I say I love this movie, I love this movie. I'm only ranking it where it is because it's a nightmare movie to me and not a Friday the 13th. Not for my overall love of it when it falls into the franchise,
Right. So. Yeah. And I will say I am bummed that line was taken out from Lori where after she brings Freddy out from her nightmare. And then Freddy realizes he's in the real world and Jason's right there. And then she's like, Freddy versus Jason, place your bets.
From the trailer. Yeah.
From the trailer. Yes. I'm like, how could y'all not put that or keep that in the film? That would have been so dynamite. Like, I never understood why they took that line out.
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't understand why they sometimes put lines in the trailer and they never end up in the movie. Like they won't be on a deleted scene. They were literally filmed just for the trailer. And I'm like, I don't know why it's there. All right. So I'm gonna move on and I'm about to make you mad. So I'm gonna say this and we're gonna table this talk because I know you hold this one in high regard.
Oh gosh.
Yes. I'm going with the movie where Jason gets his mask. Friday 13th Part 3. I know you hold. So we will talk about that later on up the list because I know how you feel about that one. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and move on. We'll have that discussion there.
All right. So after where do we start? Freddy versus Jason. So after that one, going down the list, would be Jason Takes Manhattan. For me, I'm
gonna jump in and say I got Jason Takes Manhattan right here. So at least we got one we're agreeing on right here. This is the spot.
Right, and I like I said again, don't give me. I love Jason Takes Manhattan. it was the one I feel like I saw the most as a kid. I feel like that one was always on USA Up All Night for some reason. That one was always like the one that I would always see, the most of. And I mean, and I dug it, and I wish it, I do wish it could have been in New York more like they originally intended, but I've seen like a lot of, I have the Camp Crystal Lake Memories book, and I've got the doc, and I know it wasn't the fault of like the director. It was, the producers who, pretty much kept pulling back, saying like, okay, we don't have enough money for this. We don't have enough of this. And so they spent the majority of time on the shit. And everything just happens there. But regardless, it was still fun. That was the first time you really saw Jason outside of his element. He's not in, not in the woods anymore. He's, in this city. And it's like, I just remember that moment when he's in Times Square where he's following Rennie and Sean, and then he just kind of pauses and he just like looks around and just looking at this city, and like, I mean, that was like, because you could just see like, even though you couldn't see his face, you just know like he's just like so lost.
Yeah.
In a sense, he's definitely, the old saying, he's definitely not in Kansas anymore.
Right.
He's like in this, brand new place. But I liked it. I liked a lot of the characters that they had, and especially obviously, the classic scene where Julius and Jason are fighting on the roof, and just the classic boxing scene, and he gives that line, just take your best shot, motherfucker, and just
one shot lops his head off into a trash can. It never could happen. Unrealistic, but hey, it's a lot of fun to watch.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie. I rewatched a lot of these, and this was one of the ones I rewatched getting ready for this, and it actually moved up because I used to absolutely despise this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't even have fun with this one, and now I can watch for what it is, and it's fun. I still don't understand why, when you don't have the budget, you're not able to go to New York. Why is this the longest one? Like until you get to like Freddy versus Jason, where they started making movies longer anyway.
Right.
Of all the original ones, this is the longest one. It has no business being that. They should have cut it down a good 5-10 minutes, and it would have been even better. Take out some of that Jason on a boat. Jason hanging on an anchor is like one of the funniest scenes you can see. like him hanging on as the boat pulls off. Like what?
Oh man.
And let me ask some radical stuff. Let's ask this question. What the hell was going on in New York in the 80s that they had to flush out the sewers with toxic waste every night at midnight? At midnight. This is in New York. Everybody's awake at midnight.
Right. And I'm just like that was, I mean, I never thought about that as a kid, but like when you get older, like you do like kind of think about that stuff. And I was like, yeah, like that's like super dangerous. Like just all these toxins and just like they're just flushing out like right under these like right under the city of New York. I'm just like, that's crazy. Just like really wild. But I will say the song The Darkest Side of the Night was probably like my like first introduction to like, any type of like, rock or, metal that I really loved. And I consider it like one of my favorite like metal songs of like all time is The Darkest Side of the Night. Like I love that song. Like I had to like download it, years ago back in the Napster days, because they couldn't find it anywhere. I was able to like find it that way, and like it was I kept it as like on the CD, and like downloaded it into my like iPod, and always listened to it. That is like one of my absolute favorite songs. Like I love that song. Just basically just a song about the dangers and the loves of New York City, in the 80s, basically.
All right, so keep it moving. What's your next one? Because I don't know that we're going to agree anymore. That was a rare one. Let's see if it can happen again.
Well, after Jason Takes Manhattan, that's where we get to part 5 for me.
Okay, so it's not as high up as I thought. Right. Okay, I thought it might be a little bit higher, but okay, give your thoughts on part 5.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. It is one that was different, but in a way, like, I expect it to be different because technically Jason is dead in Friday the 13th part 5. So to actually have, an imposter is, almost, kind of fitting, and you can always tell that it is an imposter because his mask, has the blue stripes, and Jason has the red stripes with the mark in it.
Right.
So, because anytime Tommy was hallucinating, he hallucinated about the real Jason, and like, like we talked about, it was, a little bit more sleazy. It had that more sleazy element, but that one had some classic scenes. Like Reggie the Reckless is one of my favorite characters in like the franchise. Like his character was so fun. I mean, this is like little like one-liners and like that scene. I think I just recently like posted a thing on it in my Instagram story where Violet accidentally sets places for Joey and Victor, who definitely aren't coming back. And the grandfather's like, I don't think they're joining us for breakfast this morning. And Reggie's like, or any other morning. The grandfather's like, Reggie, like, always just cracks me up.
I'll give you that. Reggie's good. Demon's good. I mean, the classic.
Oh yeah, Demon.
Baby, and them damn enchiladas. I mean,
oh my gosh, me and my cousins would actually do that. That scene with him and his girlfriend Nita, just do that whole scene, like we would just like imitate that like all the time. That movie is hilarious.
Were one of you in an outhouse when you did it? Because
definitely not.
Because I was like, I'm sorry, if I'm taking care of business, I don't want you singing a song to me. This is not the time. This is not the time. It's crazy.
Whoever came up, and then of course you got Junior and Ethel. Those two are like hilarious. They're one-liners and just, oh man. I actually got to meet them at a con back in like 2017, I want to say. And I was really excited to meet them. They literally had them right next to each other. And I always have the Friday the 13th cast sign my Camp Crystal Lake Memories book now, instead of me bringing like all my posters, because there's just so many posters. And I'm just thinking, I went to it and I'm just like, I have no idea what I want you guys. I said, you guys have so many classic lines in this movie. I don't even know like where to start. And they literally they said there's been a few of you like that, and they literally had this like book of just all their lines in it.
Wow.
I was like, are y'all serious? Like everything. And I was like, and I actually forget which one I actually picked, but I ended up finding one that I really liked. And I said, I cannot believe y'all had this lamination. She said, yeah, we got a lot of scenes in this movie with just these characters. And they said a lot of people are having a hard time trying to figure out what their favorite line was.
Oh, wow. All right. As for me in this pick, this is our number 8, and I am going with the first one when they broke away from Paramount, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. I'm sure this movie is strange. Like I can almost justify putting this at the bottom of the list because it's not really a Jason movie either, because it's a body swap possession movie, if you will, more than a Jason movie. They give this weird backdoor all of a sudden how he's just like some kind of demon that possesses different bodies. Like it's a strange one. And I remember when this one came out, I had discovered Jason. A friend of mine got to go see this in theaters, and I remember being so jealous because my dad wouldn't let me go because I was about to be 8 years old. I was 7 years old when this came out, and I just missed being able to go, and I'm being pissed. All right, let's move on to your next one because it might be coming soon. Who knows? So this would be number 7.
So my number 7 is actually Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday.
Okay. Very close.
So we're pretty close. Because I actually really love this film. I thought because my older cousin used to babysit me a lot, and he had it on VHS, but he had the unrated version on VHS. And I would watch this movie just like religiously at his house. Every time I went over there in the morning, I would just pop that VHS in. And I loved it. And for me, I guess it kind of just had that same factor about it as like Jason X, because, we've seen, they've been, at the camp like so many times, and, and then this one was a little different. It wasn't, about teenagers. It's, this was like young adults. And, I thought it added more to the mythology of Jason, you find out really he's not just some guy in a hockey mask who's just like, this killing machine. He's really just like this full-on demon now, and that actually has this ability to, even though his body's been destroyed, he can swap bodies, whenever he pleases, until he can get, to these relatives that will literally, as Creighton Duke put it, he'll be reborn, and he'll come back, fully as himself. And I love the fact that he has a sister, and because I had always imagined that the reason why we had never heard of Diana before was because she was like Elias Voorhees' daughter and not Pamela Voorhees' daughter. So it was like his half sister. That's how I always, thought about it, which is, which I thought they could have would have been cool if they could have dived into that more, like why, people really didn't know about her, in a sense, and they maybe could have brought up Elias Voorhees, especially with the Creighton Duke character, who obviously had, been following Jason, knows Jason's, basically his family, that, even we as the audience didn't know. So he's, has more knowledge on that. And I thought they could have used him a little bit more, kind of going back to his story, like why is he hunting Jason, which I actually, found out in some of the, just some of the interviews I read in the book, that, they actually had a lot of that stuff that they were going to do, but then I think they got pressed for time and, budget wise, they just couldn't do all that they wanted, where Jason had killed, Creighton Duke's fiance. And, so it's ever since then, he just kind of took a new, journey in life to just, basically try to stop Jason. And, so like I said, I always thought it was a cool story, and it was always definitely one of my favorite ones is Jason.
So you like them changing it up. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me ask this, because Creighton Duke has one of the strangest lines you will ever hear in a movie, period.
I think I know what you're talking about.
I think you have to. And that's when they ask him whatever comes to his mind when he hears the name Jason Voorhees. And he says, a little girl in a pink dress sticking a hot dog through a donut. Like, what the fuck? Like, what is this?
That will crack me up every time.
It will. Because it's like, what is he talking about?
Because he just says he kind of doesn't, he really thinks, and then when he says, he just has that smile, and then Robert Campbell's looking at him what the fuck? What the fuck?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you knew where I was going with that.
Oh yeah, he's one of the funnest characters I think of any Friday the 13th movie. It's Creighton Duke, because he was just all in his own. He didn't give two fucks. I mean, his whole scene with Steven where he was like, you want information? He said, you gotta pay. And then he's breaking his fingers.
Yeah, it's and I know he's not breaking his fingers, but I swear every time I watch that scene, you see him take the hand, and then you just hear the snap and see how hard it looks like he's moving his hand.
Right.
I'm I lose my breath for a minute while he does. I'm
yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Just imagining that pain.
Oh yeah. They make it look hardcore.
Yeah.
He's really just, and I know it. Yeah, I can definitely sense that. Definitely. I say, because that movie should only ever be watched in its unrated entirety. The edited version, it, to me, it ruins the film, the edited version, which, anytime I remember I would go to Blockbuster and rent it sometimes, and it would always be the edited version. They never had the unrated version at Blockbuster.
So you go to your cousin's,
right?
Yeah.
So it's always a bummer. So, but yeah, it's definitely one little bit up there for me.
All right, moving to my number 7, and I know a lot of people will think this is kind of low. I used to keep it higher. It's moved down a little bit upon rewatch, and that is the original Friday the 13th. Yes, it's a whodunit that you can never figure out because you don't get to know who she is. You don't know, I guess you kind of have to guess which counselor's doing this, who's killing, because you can't know. Never gonna
Yeah.
figure it out. It's a revenge movie, and I
Yeah.
mean she's getting which I mean really the rest of the Jasons are revenge movies because he's getting revenge for
Mhm.
his mom. But
Right.
so it's good, but it's slower. It went down a rewatch, so I don't know. Just didn't enjoy it as much this time. Yeah, I know everybody else is gonna have it pretty high, but we'll see where you have it here soon because we're down to the final six, so not gonna go too much higher anyway.
Let's see. So my next one from that would be Jason Lives.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes. And again, love it. Um, it was I felt it was one I didn't see as much when I was growing up. Like I saw it like a handful of times, but it's like the other ones I saw more. Um, so I actually used to have it a little bit farther back. And but then the more I rewatched it, like it kept dropping down more on the list. And I'm, really, and I really realized how good it was. And so, and I just love the concept and like the irony of Jason Lives because Tommy Jarvis was responsible for basically destroying Jason in part 4, but then was inadvertently responsible for bringing him back for like all eternity.
Yes.
Basically. So, because to me Tommy Jarvis is like the Nancy Thompson or the Laurie Strode or the Ellen Ripley of the franchise, even though he didn't come until later. He's really the only character that came back multiple times and faced Jason. He faced Jason 3 separate times and was able to survive each time. And I really like Tom Matthews' performance as Tommy Jarvis. I mean, I like John Shepard. I just didn't feel like they utilized him enough just because they kept him, mute most of the time. So it's like we almost didn't really get to know that particular Tommy, in a sense. But I felt like, with Tom Matthews, it was just, you know, just this, he was at that point, he was just so, just determined to make sure that Jason couldn't come back. And you just watch him, basically kind of go on this, like this journey of just trying to just get almost like in a way, him trying to get revenge for what happened to his mom and, some of the other teenagers that, were there. And what it was, and part of the bummer is that for me, I wish they had always kind of brought back Trish, Kim Beck for some of those sequels. It's like anytime he would always, have flashback, you would always just hear her voice, just, telling Tommy, Tommy, he's just like hacking Jason up. That's the only bit we got of her in the sequels, but I always wish she could have come back at least in part 6. I thought it would have been really cool to bring her back, since it's kind of going back a little bit because Sheriff Garris really really understands what happened back then, but like some of the teenagers don't, obviously, or they they hear now at this point in part 6 Jason's just more like a legend, than somebody that's actually, somebody that's real. So you can tell like some years have passed, since all the other events. And so it made it pretty cool, like, just to get these fresh faced, because this was the first time again that you actually had counselors again since like part 2, honestly, that you got counselors again. And then obviously it's the first time that you actually have actual kids at the camp for the first time in the franchise. Like, you got 6 films and never have any kids at the actual camp. But I love Jennifer Cook as Megan. I thought she was a great final girl. Like, she was a lot of fun. Like, she was really spunky. Like, just one of those real spunky girls. And and like one of my favorites scenes. I mean, it's crazy as it sounds, just like Court and Nikki, like in the camper, and they got like that rock music playing, and like I guess it's supposed to be like their sex scene, but it's like really tame at the same time because you really didn't see anything, but it, she's just like kind of rocking out while she's just like on them, and it's like while this music playing, and then like I don't know, that's just like the wildest scene. Like I thought Tommy McLaughlin did a really good job with Jason Lives, and of course you get the whole Alice Cooper element, The Man Behind the Mask, and
Right.
that's a classic. So all together, that film is it's really good to me. I really love Jason Lives.
Okay, going into my number 6, you had it, I think, down at 10 or 11. I can't remember. This is where I put my Jason X.
Ah,
And a big part of it is because this was the first time I got to see Jason in the theater. This came out a year before Freddy versus Jason. They were, Sean Cunningham was about to lose the rights, so he had to get something made so that he could keep this going. And you can tell this movie's kind of thrown together. The dialogue's pretty bad. Some of it looks kind of cheap, I'm not gonna lie, but I have a lot of fun with this movie. You get the classic liquid nitrogen kill. I mean, one of the best kills in the franchise. I remember being just like, oh, that was awesome, being in the theater, because that was just so badass. I love the whole virtual where they recreate the 80s and you get to recreate the sleeping bag kill. Like, I mean,
oh man,
I think it's disappointing Uber Jason's only there like the last 15 minutes. I wish we got more. And they definitely shouldn't have put him in the marketing for it if you're only going to have him in the last 15 minutes. Like, he was in the trailers for it. He's part of what you want to go see this Uber Jason, and he's not there long enough. But overall, still, I have fun with it. It's a nostalgia thing. All right, moving on to your number 5.
My number 5 will be The New Blood.
All right, I'm with you. I'm on New Blood right here too. So there we matched up again.
Another one that that I saw a lot growing up. That one was always on too.
Yep.
And I know just from like interviews and like reading, of course, again, that's where they originally wanted to put Freddy versus Jason.
Yep.
Was right there. So originally, 88, but obviously you had, two entities, Paramount and New Line Cinema. So, I thought it was amazing that they came up with this concept of, basically Tina having these telekinetic abilities. So, as they always call it, Jason meets Carrie, they always say, in the sense, but I try not to relate it to that, just because, but I love the fact that Jason finally has like a different kind of foe who, since Jason always has these supernatural abilities, what if we gave her, you just have a regular girl who just happens to have this innate ability in her, and I thought that was really cool to do something like that, to have somebody on his actual, playing field who could really match up with him. It's like, okay, if you can kind of do all this stuff, here's what I can do. And, she has, with her abilities. And it was a lot of fun just them kind of duking it out. But her when he finally like kind of traps her, like when she runs back to the house and she's just throwing like everything at him, basically, like anything she could find is just going, or where she knocks him out with the light fixture and he like falls all the way down to like the basement. It just had some really cool scenes in it, and which of course we all know now is like one of the most heavily centered Friday the 13th films that ever came out, was that one. And I actually had seen some of those deleted scenes. They were super, super grainy, but you could still see them. And I'm just like, when I look at them, they were kind of brutal, but like with today's standard, I mean, it's really not as bad as I felt like that they were making it out to be, where it's like, oh, we can't have all this. I mean, and I thought those special effects were incredible. And like that would have put that movie like over the top. I feel like, I mean, a lot of fans love it anyway. That's one of the ones where, they come out with several sequels, and like part 7 for them is like, some of them ranks really high. Like some people, part 7 is their absolute favorite. Like it's like their number 1. And just to have all those scenes in it to really make it complete would have just been like amazing. Even more amazing, if they were able to keep all that stuff. Because one in particular I remember, or actually 2 that I really liked, was Ben, when he kind of gets his head crushed, after he's trying to look for Mike. He thinks Michael's out there, messing with them out in the van. And like, you really see it, like they actually put it in like slow mo. like him just and it's almost like his head, it's like a waterfall just sprouts out from his face. It's because his head's just getting crushed from these deleted scenes that I saw. And I'm just like, I was like that. I was like, I mean, I just remember my like jaw just dropping. Like I said, that's how far that scene went. Like, it was pretty brutal.
Right.
And then the other one would have been like Russell's scene, because you actually see when Jason kind of catches him with that machete, like right up his face. I mean, he basically just has a huge slit up his face. His face basically split in half. And I said, that's so cool. Like, because other than Jason Goes to Hell, Part 7 to me, probably the second most brutal Jason that there was, that they had kept those scenes in, just because of how, raw and real they were.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, you're burying the lead. This is where we get our introduction to Kane Hodder as Jason, the only person who's going to play him more than once.
Of course.
And this movie right here was the one I remember catching like the end of on USA Up All Night. And I had to see Jason for the first time. Tina, I think, is a very strong final girl.
Definitely.
One of my favorite final girls, outside of the fact that the ending, and I realize it has to play into the beginning with the father, but the father has to be the one to come and pull Jason down. I'm like, no, just let Tina end this on her own. But I realize they have to tie it up from the beginning. I know why they do it. And you talked about the effects. I mean, I love when she starts tightening and his mask just breaks over his face, and it's just it's disgusting. It's one of the coolest looking Jasons. It's where you start getting like the bones in the back with the jacket ripping. I mean, it's just a badass looking Jason. I have a friend, he's been on the podcast multiple times, Chris. This is his favorite. He is the Friday 7 guy. So you talked about people having it as their favorite. He's one of those. So yeah, another one we agree on. Now I know our next one we don't. So go to your number 4.
Let's see. So after the New Blood, so for me at that point it's Part 2.
Down further than I thought. Okay.
And definitely love Part 2 a lot. I know Jenny Field is like pretty much a vast majority of people's favorite final girl from the franchise, Jenny, because she does have that ending scene where she just kind of figures it out with Jason, and kind of manipulates Jason, using her smarts to kind of play into that. But I always say one of the bummer things is just like the whole the beginning, even though it was like really cool scene, but just Alice, just knowing that what she went through, and then like to be like kind of killed off like so quick, I guess was kind of like a bummer. It kind of it almost in the same vein of like the last of the Dream Warriors in Part 4, Rachel Carruthers in Halloween 5. Kind of for me kind of felt like that. I just felt like she deserved more, just because of like everything she did, everything she went through. And the way the timeline is, this only happens like a few months after the events of Part 1.
Is that how long it is between 1 and 2?
No, just the opening scene.
Okay.
So just the opening scene is 2 months, but then once the credits roll and that get that big white screen, and then the truck's driving up the street, then 5 years.
That's what I thought was 5 years. Okay, I got you.
Right. And so it actually took me, when I was younger, I never actually realized that it had, that it had made that big leap. Because, like I said, when you're younger, you like certain things you just don't realize. And I said, one of the big things I didn't never realize is that you actually see Alice at the end, when Jenny finds that altar with Jason's mother's head, or Mrs. Voorhees' head on, you got the 2 bodies. You have Terry's body, and then like the sheriff's body, and then like sitting right in the middle was like Alice all decomposed. And I never picked up on that. And you can actually see the ice pick still on the side of her head. And it's like, I never picked up on that until later on, that was supposed to be her corpse.
Yeah, cool little detail. And I have this movie a little bit later, so I'm going to hold off. And I'm going to go back to one you talked about, the bottom, the bottom of the list. This is where I put the reboot. This went way up on a rewatch.
Okay.
And you say you would like it as a sequel. I like it because you get, so basically by this point in our life, when you think Friday the 13th, you think Jason. Nobody remembers Mrs. Voorhees. Horror fans do, but the general public. Also, what else? You see a hockey mask, you think Jason. So they take it, they give us the quick opening, getting the mother killed. So we get that little backstory enough for the new fans. You get a little bit of Sackhead Jason from part 2.
Yep.
And then we get to the hockey mask, and then you get the looking for a sister storyline of part 4. You get a modified version of the sleeping bag kill, this time being roasted over a fire like a pig or something.
Right.
So you get a lot of the movies inside this one, but it's updated enough for a modern audience to get them into Jason. I still hate we never got to see Derek Mears as Jason again. I thought he made a fantastic Jason.
Yeah, I definitely like Derek's Jason for sure.
Yeah, Trent, you get your normal bad guy, like the dumbass the group. He's an asshole.
And
like
the biggest scream queen in the film.
yeah, there's that.
Yeah, that amazing screaming for that part was hilarious.
But yeah, overall, this one went up. So I can't fault it too much. All right, we're in the final 3, man.
All right, so this one, part 4. We got, I really love the final chapter. Final chapter, just had a lot of fun elements. I mean, just random different elements. So of course you have the brother and sister element. You got Trish and Tommy, and then you just randomly have a set of twins in there. And then of course Crispin Glover's in there with his awesome 80s, I don't know, on acid dance moves. This is the best way I can describe it. So it and to me it was definitely had a lot of brutal moments in it too, especially with one of Kristen's character, Jimmy just getting the wine bottle to the face, and then the machete to the face, but the wine bottle,
the corkscrew in the hand,
in the hand, and then just the whole, and then one of my favorite elements is the whole chase scene with Trish. It just seemed like it was endless, almost. She would run back to the other house and run back to her house and run back to the other house. It. And then that last moment, where she jumps out of the window to save herself and do that whole slow motion scene, that was a lot of fun. I really loved how they kind of really went in on this one, because at the time they thought it was going to be the last one. So I really felt like they did it justice to the point where that you thought it was going to be the last one. So they that huge recap at the beginning of at that point 1 through 3,
right?
And just the campfire story from part 2, and then you get everything. And I just love how everything just happened within days of each other. From part 2 up to that point, it had only been a matter of 4 or 5 days.
I don't even think, I think it's supposed to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those 3 go one day into the next day.
Something like that. So all those just happened so, and they just kind of kept it, that way. And Ted White, it was an amazing Jason. He's one of my top Jasons, is Ted White. He was he was just super tall and menacing, but he wasn't that uncomfortably tall where it's wow. And to that, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the remake of Halloween. Tyler Mane was a giant. I mean, so to me, Ted White was big, he wasn't he still just kind of kept that, where I really just bought it, him as, being just really just menacing Jason. And one thing I wish they could have utilized was maybe, since it was kind of one, almost one after the other, maybe kind of have some of the girls in the same hospital, have Jenny in the hospital with Chris there as well, because they're literally just bringing all these bodies in literally from the day before, and I thought it'd be cool to like have them meet and like talk or something, and then just them not knowing that they just encountered the same person, and I thought it'd been kind of cool to. I mean, obviously I know because technically, a few years had passed, and reality. So maybe maybe they were busy, couldn't. But I just thought that would have been really cool for part 4 to just kind of wrap stuff up in a sense. Even though they, like I said, I feel like they did do a good job anyway. I just thought that would have been like maybe like a little icing on the cake type of deal.
Okay, so that leads me to this question then. Would you rather have the character come back and get killed off like Alice, or would you rather not be able to have the character back and just not know what went on with them afterwards? Because we don't know their fate because you never get to see them again. We know Alice's fate because she came back at the beginning of 2.
Right.
So which one do you prefer?
I guess in a way I do kind of prefer that you don't see them, and then because that way you can kind of put them in your own box and say, okay, this happened, but I feel like maybe after this much time has passed, that they're okay now, because who's to say they're not,
That's right.
We don't know. And like they could just go on and just live their lives, move, say, definitely never going back to Camp Crystal Lake ever again. And might have moved all the way on the West Coast, and just like, said F that place. So you just, you never know. So sometimes it is kind of good just to, not see them and just kind of have your own, just kind of, fantasize, kind of future form that they may have. Or if not that, then, maybe a character could maybe just something drop in like, oh yeah, this person, and I heard they left years ago, and what, this something like that, could be, just as simple, just to name drop them, just a quick, couple lines here and there, just to throw it in out there for them.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna move on to my number 3. This is where I put part 6, Jason Lives. Mm-hmm. You pretty much covered it pretty well. I will say I like the fact that Tom McLaughlin injects some humor into this one.
Oh,
yeah. He puts a lot of humor. I love the paintball crew. I love the fact that the paintball crew stuff's hilarious. I love the couple on the storming night or whatever, and the woman tries to pay off Jason, giving her a credit card. She'll go to the ATM, and it literally cuts to the American Express card. At the time, that was huge. Never leave home without it. And all that whole campaign, like all that stuff's hilarious. Like you said, Tommy being the one who wants to destroy him is the one who brings him back and basically Frankenstein's Jason to life in this one through the storm. Like it's got a lot of good stuff, and it's really actually it used to be my number 2. It actually fell one spot, and that could be because it's one of I only didn't rewatch 2 of these getting ready for this, and it was one of the ones I didn't get to rewatch because of the fact that I knew it so well.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, yeah, it's still like I said, we're at the top. These are all good at this point. We love all these movies anyway. So
right, and I will say for that part 6 that I did mention before is that's where they actually wanted to actually have Elias Voorhees make his first appearance was in part 6. I don't know if you ever saw those original storylines or storyboards. He was actually supposed to be introduced in part 6 where so the guy that covered he thought it was Jason in his little coffin down there, but it was really Hoss, and he like dug the grave back over. That older guy, he ended up dying, and later on he gets like a beer bottle to the broken beer bottle to the throat. But in the original storyboard, he actually survived. And once they destroyed or Jason at the end, you find out who actually had Jason buried in the first place, because he comes back to go put like flowers or something like on the grave, and it's Elias Voorhees, and the old graveyard keeper is like the one there saying like something like, "Oh, you're back putting," and like, "I don't understand why you put flowers on his grave, or come back and do this." And he's almost supposed to be like a shadowy type of character. Like I think that the way I thought, like you don't really see his face entirely, but but think like somehow or another you find out that it's Elias Voorhees is the one who, put Jason in the ground, and who's also responsible for actually having Pamela buried in part 4, like randomly off on the side of the highway, which I always thought that was so weird. Like you see like a random headstone like in the like right off the side of the highway like that, but that was supposed to be him as well. But they end up cutting that, which I thought that's one element that I always felt that I said that's one element that we never really touched. We know that Elias Voorhees is his father, but we've never actually seen him, or they've never utilized him. And if they wanted to do something different, especially now that, Friday the 13th, they're talking about making some new movies, like I feel like that should be something that should be touched on, is Elias Voorhees, because he technically is the main line for Jason. Of like it to me, it's the Voorhees line that is this, kind of domineering, almost otherworldly, something's going on with that bloodline, that Voorhees bloodline.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see that. I know that, I think, was it Victor Miller? Didn't he win the battle? I can't remember. I know it was him and Cunningham. I think Victor won.
Yeah, Victor. Yeah.
I think he, and I don't know if I'm hoping to get some new movies, because if you're gonna stop making these movies, don't stop at 12. At least get a 13th. I mean, come on. You can't do that.
Yeah. And it's been too long.
Yeah. 13 years ago now. Ugh, there you go. Perfect time to get one. 13 years. All right, top 2. Go in with your number 2. I think I know what it is.
It actually is number 1. The original, the OG, where it all started. And I just loved it. I mean, it was like kind of like the first of its kind of the time, especially with the special effects. Like the special effects for, this was bomb, and this was like the really, like I said, one of the really early first examples of like an 80s, special effects slasher. Because obviously, Halloween came out in 78, and that's considered a slasher, but that one wasn't really about the effects or anything like that. We kind of touched upon that. It's more like atmosphere and, all of that. So this was like the really first of its kind that really set it off. Because I felt like a lot of 80s films after Friday the 13th came out made sure that their, kind of gore factor was on point, where the special effects, were, as real as possible, and almost as shocking as possible, as you could make them. So I felt like Friday the 13th, the original kind of set a tone for how the 80s were set, the way they made the films. And of course, having Betsy Palmer play Mrs. Voorhees was something completely unheard of, to have this not just a female killer, but like an older female killer, and a mother who was like, set on revenge. And you're right, there's no way we could have guessed who it could have been, because even in like when they kind of had her lurking in the shadow, they kept her very like manly, in a sense. And and they said they did that on purpose. She even talked about how they made her cut her hair even shorter, and they gave her that sweater, and she's wearing like the button up underneath. It's more of a like more masculine type of thing, because I always feel like they do that a lot with female. Like when you find out that the killer's a female, they always kind of put like a bit of masculinity on them, so you're not just gonna think it's gonna be a female. Because when I relate back to that, it's like urban legend. You just have the person in the hood, but they don't make that character like, under the hood like feminine at all, or anything that would suggest like, oh, this could be a female. Like, they always kind of keep that man element on the killer at all times. So when when it is a woman, it's like, oh wow, it's like supposed to be another shocking factor, which back in 1980, I'm sure was 10 times as big as it is now. Because now we've had several female killers, so now it's not really like a surprise or anything like crazy radical. But 1980, having, like I said, not just a woman killer, but an older woman killer, and then especially Betsy Palmer, who was really known for like being like this wholesome, type of, well, I don't know if she really did like call her, like, did a whole bunch of like acting back then, where I guess she was on some type of show. I don't know, something like I don't know, Hollywood Squares type of thing or something. Like I just remember like seeing certain things about her, but something that just lasted for a long time where people just knew her face and knew her name from that, and it was supposed to be like a more like of a wholesome show. So I actually thought that was actually pretty genius to get her to do that, because nobody would have expected her, even her coming in so late into the film. Nobody would think that, oh, she's the killer. She just might be somebody who randomly comes and she's going to help. And then she looked, and she was really brutal in that. Like, some of those scenes where her and Adrian King are like fighting on the beach, or just like, and I've heard that they really got down and dirty, and like, when she's like smacking her head into like all that's real, and Betsy was really good at being menacing. When she finally snapped, that look on her face, it's just like, she just looked crazy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and like I said, and then of course, how the first Friday, was, there was nothing supernatural about it. Like, like you said, it was a revenge story. This was just about a mother who lost her son, who just kind of snapped and, decided to go on this, this revenge plot. And, just went on from there. And, Jason was just supposed to be this nightmare of Alice's, and it was supposed to just be like, oh, is he down there or is he not down there? And, so.
Then it made money.
Right. It's like, well, now we have to. And then that's what always got me with part 2. It's like, so it's like, yeah, he didn't really drown, but somehow he survived and just decided to like live in some old shack in the woods for like 20 years. I'm just like, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
It doesn't. And also Pamela's story is kind of flawed because she worked at the camp, so she also wasn't paying much attention to her son. So
right,
you can kind of be blamed for that too.
Right. And that's what and I was never sure if this was how it was supposed to be, but if the two that were killed at the beginning were supposed to be the ones that let him drown, or if they just happened to be the ones making out and she was just mad about that and killed him. I don't know if I ever got that clarified or not. But I was never sure if they were the two, or like I said, or if they were just the ones who, just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, but I could be wrong. All right. So my number 2 is part 2. Jenny is my favorite final girl. I think she's genius. The ending is genius with her mimicking being Pamela Voorhees and tricking Jason. I love it. I think other than that, you said pretty much everything. I do love the fact that the whole trope of, oh, cars don't start in horror movies, they give you a reason for that in this movie. Like, she's late to getting to camp because her car is having problems. So it's at least believable when it happens to her. Like, you're not like, oh, that car was running fine. Well, no, this car was not running fine. It was having problems the whole time. And what are our thoughts on Paul? What happened to Paul? It's a mystery. Did he die or did he live?
For what I understand, Paul actually died.
Okay.
And even though we didn't technically see it, that was something that I read in Camp Crystal Lake Memories, which is why I loved that book, because it answered like so many questions that I had. And
I need to go back through it. I do own
know I had. But they said that when they did part 2, when she was saying, Paul, where's Paul? And then she said there's actually a line by one of the paramedics who says like, he didn't make it, but they said something with the audio was messing up around that, and like you couldn't hear it, even though he says it. They said you can't hear him say like he didn't make it. So technically it was confirmed that he did die, but we couldn't hear it.
Oh, goodness.
Right. But we never know why or how, because, last we know, Jason pulled Jenny out of the window, and, as far as we know, he could have killed her, but obviously not. But so it's like, what did happen to Paul? So, they kind of left it. So we know he died, but we just don't know how, in what manner. So that's really ambiguous.
Right.
The way that they kept that.
All right, we've made it. I figured this was your number 1. I thought I'd heard you mention this. Go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say it.
Friday the 13th Part 3 is my number one. Like, Chris Higgins is my favorite final girl of the Friday franchise.
And I have to know why.
I just love her because, well, one, to me, she was like a complete dichotomy to like all the other girls. One, she like every girl in the franchise is blonde. She's like the only brunette in the entire franchise. In the original, like 1 through 8, she's the only dark-haired girl. So that's like one. So she always kind of some reason she always kind of reminded me a bit of Nancy a little bit, just the way she looked, kind of had that curly hair to her. And so I always loved Nancy. So so I always kind of related her and Nancy together in a sense. And then I love that there's so much mystery about Chris Higgins that we don't know. She went through this thing with Jason, in between that 5-year jump, before we even met her, that she encountered Jason in the woods, and then she managed to survive it, but we don't know how she survived it. And like all she tells you in that story is, she said, this guy attacked me. She said I passed out. She said, I don't know what happened. She said, next thing I know, I wake up in my own bed and nobody can tell her why.
And you like that.
And I love that.
I hate the fact that they basically try to turn Jason into a rapist in this movie. Like
is that what you got?
That's the way I take that little scenario.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I feel like that's a sexual.
I
feel like that's a sexual attack they're trying to insinuate, and I'm like, why? Why does this need to happen?
Oh, wow. I never actually looked at it like that.
Okay,
wow.
Well, this is good. We're working.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I never did think about it like as a sexual assault. Like, I mean, definitely. I mean, if he is just like out in those woods, but other than that, like, just that that mystery surrounding her. I always love the fact that she left a permanent mark on Jason that carries pretty much throughout the entire franchise, which is that axe right in the mask. Every time I see that, I mean, I could be on part 8, you just know, you see that chart and you say, where did that come? Chris Higgins did that.
Yeah, and then that goofy scene. Oh, the gimmick of 3D. Man.
3D, yeah.
It's the early to mid 80s whenever Jaws 3D was out. This was out. But I mean, you get goofy 3D scenes. Like, I don't care about seeing a yo-yo go down on someone's face. Like, that's not something I want to see in 3D. Like the head crushing of Rick. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's worth it. Shooting the spear. That's worth it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. The spear towards Vera. That one was a good one.
That's worth it. But someone putting a stick towards the camera. I don't care about the stick. Okay. And let's talk about so for me, the one good thing Shelley did was this where we get our mask. But what are your thoughts on Shelley?
Shelley was unlike any other character in the entire franchise to me. He was like a character all of his own. He was somebody who really just doubted himself. I mean, he even says it like, he's like, would you be yourself? If you look like this, he's always wearing masks. I always felt sorry for Shelley, because like I was told you, like I was like a bully kid in school, and he just kind of reminded me of somebody who just, always just tried to fit in, but just never could. But, just happened to find a friend in Andy, and, he did all this stuff to get attention because he just felt like that was the only way for him to be. Like, he didn't know how else to be because nobody would look at him twice otherwise.
Okay. So whether you want to put yourself or someone else, have you seen anybody that acts like this
in real life?
Yeah. That does these kind of things, because I've seen, he claims to be the awkward, shy person. I've seen those people, and they go like sit on a couch, stay quiet, and keep to themselves. They're not constantly playing these tricks on people that are trying to scare the shit out of them. Like, to me, this was a weird interpretation of that type of character. But if you're saying you've seen it, then that's different. I have not seen someone who acts like this.
Well, see, I never looked at Shelley as like the awkward, shy, or the awkward, quiet kid. He was just, to me, just more awkward. without the shine, because you could tell he wasn't really shy.
Exactly. So I
He
guess
wasn't
you're
really
okay.
shy. He was just very awkward, and it's crazy when I put like have all this stuff on now. I'm thinking about it like in my like writer's head now when I see these stories now, and just kind of put it that way. So he was definitely that awkward kid, but part of me also thinks that Shelley had some like could have been partially like autistic.
Oh,
Like,
I definitely
like
think
with
Shelley is.
Asperger's.
Yeah, I definitely think he's on the spectrum somewhere. I would agree with that.
And that's where, but back then they didn't really talk about that. You just saw these people back then, but they didn't really say like what it was. They always just called them strange or bizarre or the R word. I don't like saying it.
No,
You know what I mean. So that's how they would describe it. But nobody really dove into like the real, like the real mentality behind it of like why. And like, so to me, I always felt like he, like, like I said, he was on the spectrum, and that was his way of, in a way trying to communicate. Cause when he's in the back of the van with Vera, he tells her like, she's like, what do you got in that little, in that box? He says, he's like, my whole world.
Well,
And, that's all his things that he did to pull these tricks. So, that's his way of basically almost communicating, or the best way he can. Because when every time he does stuff, he's laughing. He's like, "Oh, I guess I got you." And then like when they get really mad, he's like so confused. He's like, "No, I was just joking." Like, to him, he wasn't trying to harm anybody or really cause anybody to be upset. He was just really joking. But it's not like his mind comprehended how badly that could affect somebody.
I mean, he hides in the lake and scares the shit out of that. I can't remember her name. You remember all their names.
Vera.
That was Vera?
Vera. Mm-hmm.
He's like, I just want you to like me. And I'm like,
right.
I don't know. It's over the top for me. Too over the top for me. I appreciate the mask. Shelley.
Yeah. That one has been my favorite since I was 14 years old. And like I had that one recorded on like from TNT for years. So all I would ever seen for like years was the edited version. So when I actually bought the VHS for the first time when I was like 14, I saw it in its entirety, and it was like watching a whole new movie, because edited back then was like they really edited. So like you never saw any of the like the pot smoking scenes in the back of the van. Like they cut all that out. So I never knew none of that stuff was in there. And I just still remember to this day, just being in awe, like, just like, oh my, like, this is what I was missing. Like, I was I swear they edited out at least 10 minutes of that film. It felt like, so just being able to see all that, like, and then just really just set it off. And I would just literally come home, because when I finally got it on VHS and saw it in its entirety, I was like in middle school, I think like 7th or 8th grade. And I would literally go home and just like immediately turn it on while I was doing my homework. Was part 3. And like Chris Higgins, like I said, Chris Higgins is my favorite final girl. And Richard Brooker is my favorite Jason. Because I felt like he was the one that kind of set Jason up with that particular swag, that walk he had, and just the way he carried himself. I felt like Ted White kind of used that in part 4 a lot. I don't know, it's just something about that particular. So when I always think about Jason, like those early moments of Jason, because that's when Jason actually ran, actually chase you. And I really felt Brooker really set that off the most, or at least for me, he did. So there's just so many elements of why I just love part 3. It was just so I never saw it in 3D until much later, because obviously, like I told you, I recorded off of TV, so there was no 3D going along with that. So I just loved it. Just for some reason, always connected with that one the most.
All right, and the only one I have left, Friday 13th, the final chapter. So yes, I mentioned even in part 5, I love the random dance scene. Crispin Glover gives an all-time random dance scene in a horror movie. I love the line, "You dead fuck." I love that. I just love that line. I love Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis. I love the fact that even though it's completely unrealistic, he's got all these monster masks. I mean, they're Tom Savini quality because he made them, but he's got all these monster masks. hanging around his room that he made because he's just a monster kid. I love the scene where he's looking out across the neighbor and he sees the girl undressing and he's jumping up and down on his bed. Like, but it's like real. Like, I feel like I would have done that as a kid. If I looked out the window and saw that, that's what I'd be like looking, but then burying my head in the bed because I know I'm not supposed to see this.
Yeah, right.
Like, it just felt so cool. And then I love the end. Like, I know he starts to go crazy himself, shaves his head, and somehow tricks Jason into thinking he's himself. I don't know what we're like, how that was going to work. Like, it's like a manifestation of him in this version, but it's got my favorite way that Jason dies in any of these movies, and like sliding down the machete.
Oh,
and
yeah,
violent, gruesome, shows it. Like, that's why when you hear about part 7 not being able to make it past, like, that is gruesome.
Right.
That is a violent scene. And then he does what everyone should do in a horror movie but never does. He picks up the machete and just whacks. I mean, just keeps whacking. Die. I mean, he just goes to town on him. Something they never do. They always just leave him. Oh, he's dead, and then they come back. Ain't no coming back.
Like Jason is in pieces at that, because you don't see him.
Yeah, you don't see him.
Like Jason is like left in pieces. Like, the way he just hacks him up.
All right, so that is our list. We've done it. So let's do something. Let's do something fun real quick. Let's do this. Why don't you name off like probably your top 3 or so kills off the top of your head? I know I didn't tell you about this beforehand, but I know you know them. So.
Let's see. Well, we already mentioned Rick with the eyeball scene. Like that. That's like one of the earliest versions of like a scene like that I love. And then the other one is jumping all the way to part 9, which is Debbie and Luke in the tent.
Oh, that's got to be the unedited version, because the edited version you don't see shit.
Oh, you don't see. Oh yeah, you don't see anything. The unedited version. I actually kind of have a funny story with that. I watched that with my grandmother. Me and her watch movies all the time, but she was a cool grandmother. Like, she could watch those movies and just like laugh. She wouldn't be like, "Oh my god, how? Oh, I can't." Like, she would watch that stuff and laugh.
Okay,
and so like. I remember telling her when that scene, I said, do you get it? Like, when they got killed, she said, what? I said, she literally came and went at the same time, and she just died laughing. It was so funny. So that one is always a good one for me, is that one. And a third one, maybe. And this is the one I can just think of right off the top of my head quick, is probably the head chop of Mrs. Voorhees, just because that was pretty new and it looked real. That was real effect, real practical effects. I mean, it really looked like her. I mean, you have like the stub, like, it's not like this, how it is today, where it's like somebody gets the head cut off and it's almost like you can see like the blue screen where their head was. Or something like that. This was real, and it, had, her hands are like moving, trying to like feel her head. Like, it's almost, because they said people can do that when their head is like removed. It's like their body is still moving in a sense. And I thought that was just really, really interesting. Like I said, especially for like, that time, 79, 1980, that was really, so that one is definitely a top kill.
Okay. Yeah. I think that Tom Savini hands coming up looking for the head kind of takes you out of it. They're hairy hands that you clearly, and I guess if you saw it back, like, well, I don't know, on a theater you probably would notice it, but by the time it hit VHS, you weren't noticing that stuff. But now on crystal clear Blu-ray, you easily notice that.
Right. Oh wait, those weren't Tom hands. Those are Tavros Stavrakis. I think that's how you say his name. Tom Savini's like partner that they worked on that together. Those are his knuckles. Yeah. Those are his knuckles. Like, I've seen the pictures where he's got, because he's basically kind of hunched over like this, and the body of Mrs. Voorhees is only basically like the torso up, and he's the one. So when he kind of leans over and he's like moving his hands up in the frame, and then you see, of course, see the hairy knuckles.
Okay. All right. I know they're hairy knuckles. I know that.
Oh yeah.
At least shave your knuckles for that scene. Try to. I know they weren't thinking about that.
Like super low budget.
Yeah. So I will go with, oh shit, I'm drawing a blank on his name, so you're gonna have to help me out. Part 2, I think it's Mark, the guy in the wheelchair.
Oh yeah, Mark. Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Machete to the face, and then the classic roll down the stairs. I mean,
Oh my. Oh, that's super classic.
yeah, classic kill. I've mentioned Jason X with the liquid nitrogen kill. That thing just wowed me in theaters. So it's always stuck with me before that. And I really like Trey and Freddy versus Jason get folded in half, but I think I'm gonna have to go with my man Kane Hodder and go with the sleeping bag kill. And I'll go parts. I like Jason X where he does the one into the other, but I think I'm gonna go with the single slam into the tree from part 7 because
And originally that one was more. He did it like 6 times in the but before it was cut,
right.
Like when he does it, you just see all this blood coming out the bag, and then it's like in slow motion that I got to see. And I said that's like super violent. Like I said, that girl was like shredded.
Yeah, I kind of do think that scene needs it. Like a lot of people say, the one swing makes it a little more violent that she's dead on one swing. But my problem is watching that he picks her up by the head. She covers up. He's picking her up by the head, and he slings her once into the tree. That's gonna like smash her legs. He's not hitting her on the head at that point, but it got cut. He wanted more. He couldn't get it. Not his fault.
Right.
So still a classic scene.
And I'll say honorable mention to Nikki in part 6, where Jason just like slams her face into like the metal of the like camper, and then like you see the impression of her face like screaming as it's going through. I thought that was like so cool. And like I found out the way they did it was like they filmed it underwater. That's how they like came up with that effect to do it like that. So that's pretty. I wouldn't even have had thought that.
No,
I always thought that one was really cool.
Yeah, I can throw out an honorable mention. I'll go with part 5. It's the couple that's out in the woods. It's when the guy walks off and the girl's just laying there, and he comes up with the garden shears in the eyes, and he just crunches like, oh my god, that's so brutal.
And you hear it too. It's just like,
you hear the crunching, and that's what makes it so brutal. So yeah, that would be an honorable mention for me.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a good one.
All right. I hope you guys have enjoyed this Friday the 13th talk. We're going to get out of here. Anthony, tell everybody where they can find you. Go ahead and tell them where to go find your books, and hopefully we'll see a new one from you soon.
All right. You can always find me on my social media accounts, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Hooks on Twitter, of course, is Ant Lost in Horror, because I'm always lost in horror. In Instagram, you'll find me as Anthony the Dreamer. And then I'll keep everyone posted about when this latest book, Fear of Silence, comes out. Make sure you pick up a copy.
There you go. And as always, Twitter and Instagram, ynfmoviepod. Most active on Twitter, of course. Easiest thing to do, linktr.ee/ynfmoviepod. It'll have podcast places, social media, YouTube channel, my Letterboxd account, all that good stuff. And I'll be back next week. Don't know what's coming yet, but until then, you guys take care, and I will talk to you next time.